Conor McGregor's one of the UFC's biggest stars, and he's definitely made the big bucks. But before we get into his earnings, we gotta look at his recent comments on Islam Makhachev. Apparently, Conor thinks he has the tools to beat the Dagestani champ. Agree with it or don't, that's up to you, but the Mac certainly seems confident in his claims. He took to Twitter after UFC 280, and while he did congratulate both Islam and Oliveira, the guy also made sure to let everyone know he wasn't ready to accept the new 155-pound king. We all know the Irish brawler's rambunctious attitude, and he was a double champ, so his confidence kinda makes sense. Yeah, in order to be able to compete, guys definitely have to believe that they're the best, so if nothing else, we've all got to respect Conor's conviction. Anyway, the man didn't go into a lot of detail about these tools of his, but he did touch on a few things. But before we get into that, I gotta remind everyone of his loss to Khabib. Yeah, that's where all this ultimately is stemming from. Now, though McGregor thinks he's learned enough that he's got the perfect system for destroying the Dagestani style. Talk about a grudge. Let's get into the specifics of this system and talk about what these tools might actually be. Basically, his tools and system are just some of the things he was missing in his fight with Khabib. According to the Notorious, he's improved his ability to strike while he's being controlled. And against guys like Makhachev, this could definitely be effective. Still, I don't know. The man claims he's got some insane striking ability from the clinch and amazing brain-battering shots he can throw from the canvas. But he's really only had a year to develop these skills, and his main issue wasn't the inability to strike, it was his lack of wrestling. So unless his tools include something that can actually directly counter Makhachev's elite sambo skills, we should probably not be too confident in Mac's system. Think about it. We all know how amazing this guy's striking has always been, but Khabib still demolished him. And while better striking from the ground and the clinch would help, I really don't see how this system could stop Makhachev unless it incorporates wrestling. In any case, McGregor's comments were extremely entertaining, and part of it was because he was implying he'd be taking on Islam at some point. But how likely are we to see Mac's system actually in action? Well, sorry to disappoint, but it's probably never gonna happen. Honestly, as much as MMA fans everywhere would like to see this match happen, it just doesn't make sense. Even if Islam was up to it, which he does seem to be, the UFC would never be able to get away with letting Conor cut the line to a title shot. If this fight's ever gonna happen, and if we're gonna get to see McGregor's claims being tested, it's gonna have to wait till the guy can get some solid wins. And I mean really solid. Guys like Gagey and Chandler are gonna have to fall at his hands before he's able to step in there with Makhachev. Yeah, as much as I like the guy, I don't think that's very realistic. I'd love to see Conor prove me wrong, though. He's definitely a beast, and he's one of the greatest strikers the UFC has ever seen. And with abilities like that, it's no surprise that McGregor's still the PPV king. This man's earned a boatload of money from the promotion. Yeah, it's so much that there are multiple things we'll have to go over to understand the fighter's earnings fully. Starting with his net worth. Yeah, this Irish brawler is by far one of the highest paid athletes in the fight game and the highest paid in martial arts. Brace yourselves, because this is an insane number. That's right, Conor McGregor is worth easily north of $200 million. That's absolutely amazing. I mean, this is the kind of cash movie stars touch. Also, this number is probably far less than what he's actually worth, so it's a conservative estimate. And if we factored in the money he's made from his whiskey brand, well, then it wouldn't be unrealistic to double this number. Anyway, the question is, how did he amass this amount of wealth from his time fighting with the UFC? Especially when other fighters are always complaining about poor pay. Well, the answer is simple. McGregor's special, and he's always been a natural entertainer. The fans love the guy. And yeah, this means he can sell fights like nobody else. He's not the PPV king for no reason. And while UFC PPVs aren't the only way he's made money from the promotion, I've got to talk about some of his biggest fights so you guys can understand the magnitude of his income. Let's start with his fights against Charles Mendes and Jose Aldo. Okay, so starting with Mendes, this was the interim title fight at featherweight that won the Mac his shot at Aldo later in the year. And this wasn't anywhere near his biggest fight, just by the way, but he still made a whopping $5 million from it.
Very bad position for Conor.
Mendes. Can he get it?
He lost it. He lost it, and they're back up.
uppercut. McGregor.
Yeah, and if he got $5 million from Mendez, can you imagine how much he got for Aldo? Especially considering how he KO'd the legend in 13 seconds? Yep, it was another incomprehensible number, a whopping $12 million. And this was all the way back in 2015.
As he was getting knocked out, look at that. Boom. And then hammer fist, out cold. And that's it.
At that point, this guy was making upwards of $1 million for every fight. All that cash adds up. Now, these fights earned him a lot of money, but there were others that were even more insane. That's right, I'm talking about Diaz and Khabib. Now, considering how these fights gave us many of the classic Conor moments fans still pour over today, I'm sure most of you are aware of them. The Notorious stepped into the octagon with Diaz twice, and the first one was an insane $10 million.
This is a dogfight, ladies and gentlemen. A real dogfight.
Biggest fight in MMA history, and they're still swinging.
But the rematch shattered all the records there were. Yeah, Conor made $25 million from that match. That's a total of $35 million just from Nate Diaz. And this number dwarfs most of the other fight earnings that the Mac saw in his prime, except for one. Yep, Khabib. That one was an all-time classic, and McGregor and Khabib were both cemented in UFC history forever. Now, the Irishman lost that fight, but he still walked away with $50 million.
And he gets tripped right down. Too good.
His grappling is just
Tremendous
one step ahead.
Just tremendous control on the ground.
50, guys. Yeah, I think by now that insane 200 million number I mentioned before will be making more sense. But still, with all these fights, I'm sure you've noticed that we don't really even get close to that humongous amount. That's because we haven't gone over the Mac's biggest payday yet. And that was, without a doubt, Conor versus Floyd Mayweather. Now, you guys might be asking how this counts as a UFC earning. But remember, at this point, the Irishman was still on the contract. This means that his match with Mayweather was organized and set up by the UFC itself.
2011, first stoppage. McGregor did not go down. He showed great heart, but ultimately, give McGregor credit, you know.
You can bet Dana wasn't going to let the chance at this kind of money pass him by, even though he's recently refused to let Ngannou have this sort of boxing match. The UFC president made an exception for his golden boy back in the day, and it was definitely worth it because Conor made at least $100 million from that one fight alone. Those were some of McGregor's most entertaining comments about Islam Makhachev and also the absolutely enormous amount he's earned from the UFC. See you in the next one.